The director of the Defense Innovation Unit says the Pentagon's efforts to recruit science and tech talent are currently insufficient. The DoD needs to do a better job of recruiting, developing, and retaining talent to create a more blended workforce. Loren DeJonge Schulman is Vice President for Research and Evaluation at the Partnership for Public Service. She's former Chief of Staff to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs. Loren, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
So the director of the Defense Innovation Unit said that one problem is that key technology positions are staffed with military officers who might not be as knowledgeable about the topic as civilian experts. What do you think about that?
I think that that's a great point. There's a lot of challenges in the defense workforce around science and technology matters. Starting with, we don't just need engineers. We need people who can design policy. We need program managers. We need people who can buy technology, people who can deliver for the American people. And then on top of that, we need folks who have basic research and development skills and anything from basic information technology to AI, 3D printing, quantum, cybersecurity. It's a whole gamut of skill sets. And the military quite often tries to fill such roles with your basic multi-tool, a military officer who is capable of doing a lot, but may not be capable in all those really specific, highly technical roles that are necessary for national security.
So what's a blended workforce?
I think a blended workforce is going to require those military officers that Mike Brown was talking about, who bring a lot of specific skill sets to this challenge. But on top of that, we need the career civilian workforce to be upskilled and trained in anything from the policy roles to the procurement to the R&D skills that I mentioned before. I think it's also important to bring in some of the temporary talent that we see in the Defense Digital Service, Presidential Innovation Fellows, AAAS fellows, and many others who are coming to government for a short period of time on tour of duty assignments, as they're called, to lend their really specific expertise to national security challenges. And that means we need to have offices and teams who are ready to take advantage of that talent and not just let them sit for many months waiting to, for example, get their computer or their printer set up.
So I wanted to ask you about those rotations, because that was used by the Air Force as a possible solution where industry experts could come for a limited time, work on some technical problems, and then go back to their private sector jobs. Do you like that solution? Do you think that's a good one?
I think that has to play a role in our overall technology workforce. And the goal of these sorts of organizations is to bring in tech experts into government to make a really positive outsized impact that you couldn't find in the current civilian workforce or the military workforce. And Congress has given Department of Defense a range of hiring authorities to actually make this happen. Here's the challenge. They have a goal of zero retention. Most of these roles that are temporary fellows or exchanges do not have an opportunity to bring those experts on staff for a longer period of time. That means that a lot of what they're bringing to the table is not sustainable. It's just a temporary thing, and it's not made permanent into the defense infrastructure.
So they have to leave. They're not allowed to stay even if they'd like to.
So if they applied to a permanent role into the federal government, they absolutely could. But we don't make it easy for them. I think we could make it a lot easier for them. And also the intent of the program is that temporary rotational status. We have to have a blended workforce that's purposeful and not one because we're band-aiding and slapping together all of these different short-term solutions without thinking through the longer-term needs of the federal workforce.
So you say that there really should be better training and education for civil servants within the Defense Department, and that the military side is really pretty good.
I think it's actually an all of the above challenge. On the military side, we need to make sure that we're asking military officers to do roles in the science and technology space that make sense for them. They can set the requirements. They can talk about how they want to use things in the field. And they can obviously fulfill a lot of policy and procurement roles and strategy roles as well. On the civilian side, we don't have nearly as intensive a program for training and development and using skills on the civilian side, from artificial intelligence to cybersecurity and so on. Being purposeful about these investments and making sure that those civilians are placed in roles that make sense for them over the long term, that actually activate those investments, is a critical factor in our national security and something we absolutely have to do if we want to compete with China.
You know, Loren, you say being purposeful, but I wonder if you think that there's a sufficient sense of urgency within DoD to really get the workforce up to the skills needed to face China.
We have heard about the challenges in the technology workforce at the Department of Defense for at least a decade. Multiple secretaries of defense have talked about this. But what we haven't done is seen their urgency trickle down to the military departments, to the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and to the people who need to be activated. Here's a key factor in this challenge: HR. Human resources. We need to have HR workers who are trained in how to hire for the kinds of skills that we need. That is a major gap that we have. DoD has all the authorities it needs to be able to hire this talent it requires. It's not actually using them because we haven't activated an active recruitment process, an HR process that is using all the many hiring authorities that it has and thinking through how to retain that talent once they're there and making sure they have those on-ramps, as I talked about, and the ability to have external rotations, get the training they need, and so on.
And Loren, just in the 15 seconds we've got left, any last solutions or recommendations that you have to fill those tech talent gaps within the DoD workforce?
Leaders in the Department of Defense need to tell the stories of why S&T is so important to the national security mission and how they're actually taking advantage of those skills today. If they tell those stories, if they build that brand, they'll have far more folks who are interested in serving this mission and have a longer term, more sustainable workforce in this space.
All right. Well, Loren, thanks so much for being on the program. Nice to talk to you.
Great to see you. Thank you.